fifth one. So we have a element validation state pseudo classes. Element state pseudo classes, element validation state pseudo classes. What are validation state pseudo classes? Validation state means we can verify whether the field is valid or not. Based on that, we can apply effects. Validation state means. So applying based on whether the field is valid or not. That is actually validation state pseudo classes. So validation pseudo classes are those in that we have options like required. We have option like required. Required actually it verifies the required attribute set for input. Required attribute set for input. We have required is used for required attribute set for input. Another we have optional. It defines effects when required is not defined. When required is not defined, then it is optional. So when required is defined, it is required. When required is not defined, it is optional. Next important is we have like valid. So this is, it verifies any validation, valid or not. If it verifies any validation defined in input. We have invalid. It returns effects when any validation is invalid. When any validation returns invalid. When any validation returns invalid, what to display? Valid is what to display. We have another option like in range. It is for number validation. Out of range. It is for number validation. It is also number validation. This is so in range, out of range, both are number validation. This is for minimum and this is for maximum. If it is within the range, minimum satisfied and minimum and maximum both are there, right? So in range and out of range indicates whether the value is within the minimum and maximum. So for validation, these are important classes: required, optional, valid, invalid, in range, and out of range. Here, observe how to use them. For example, we have text box. For example, we have text box. The username and a text box is there. I will write like this. I will put required. If I put required, then I need to show some screen design to tell that it is required. Then what we will do is we will just put hash user if it is required. If it is required, then we will put border as 1 pixel solid red color, and we can also put box shadow 2 pixel 2 pixel 2 pixel red color. That means if it is required, it will be like this. If it is optional, that means instead of required, you can give optional. If it is optional, then change another color. Optional, I will put yellow. Suppose I am keeping yellow color for optional, red color for required. But you see here, this will verify when I run this. You can see that here we are defining the input. So this is user U uppercase. Huh? Yeah, U uppercase. Fine. You can see it is red color. Why? Because required is defined. If required is not defined, that means if I am removing this required, if I remove that required, then it will display yellow. If I add required, it will display red. This is okay, but this is not great. Why this is not great? Because it is just to verify required mentioned or not. Suppose I am typing the name. When I am typing the name, that means required is satisfied. Na? Required is satisfied. Then why it is not changing the color? If required is satisfied, it should change color. It is not changing the color. That means this affects only to check whether required attribute is set for input or not. It is not to verify required satisfied or not. It is to check only required attribute is given or not. So if required validation is satisfied, then we can put through valid and invalid. Valid and invalid are used for validation satisfaction. If required satisfied, valid. If required not satisfied, invalid. Invalid. So this is only for required mentioned or not. Required mentioned or not for validations, right? So that is only for that. So this is one example I will give here. Required and optional are used only to verify the attribute, not validate. Understood? Verify the attribute, not validate. This is example. This example I will give. It is only to verify attribute, not validate. Not validate. Now, important is if I want to validate, better you can use this valid, invalid. That is good. For example, see now, I will write like this. I will put here a screen suitable to this, like this. I will add data list. I will just put a heading register and data list with the data term, username, data definition, input type is equal to text, and ID I will give as user name. Okay. And in this I given required. Okay. And below that, beside it, I will put here, beside this text box, I will put a span. If you want below, you can put a div. Understood? You can put a div if you want below, right? So you can put a div. In this div, I can put a message saying that username required. That message should come. And for this, I will put style color as red. That style color as red we are giving. That is in red color, it will display like this. Username required. If I satisfied that username, that means if I am entering the username, this message should disappear. That message should disappear. That means now we have to verify whether required valid or not. Previously, we are verifying required given or not. Now we have to verify required valid or not. Then for that, we have to write like this. That means we have to put hash username if it is valid. If username is valid, then the div beside it, adjacent means plus na, the div beside it, what should happen? Display as none, display none. So if hash, if username is invalid, then the div beside it should display block. Inline means side by side. Block means one below another. Okay. Now you see here, I am entering the name, it is disappeared. I am not entering the name, then it shows. That is good. You can even apply effect for text box. You can change text box colors and all. But this is good. This is simple and correct way of presenting. That means if username required, it will. And not, then it will display the message. Actually, earlier, we have to manage this. So with lot of validations in JavaScript. But now we can do with CSS. We can manage with CSS, right? So that is one simple option how we can handle. Okay. Next important here, not only this, for example, suppose I give data term, I given mobile, data definition, input type is equal to text, ID as mobile, and for mobile I am using pattern. If you remembered, for mobile pattern /+91 and /d means only number, how many digits? 10 digits. And below this, we will keep div style color as red. And here we will define invalid mobile. Invalid mobile. We are defining invalid mobile. So if it is not matching the pattern, that means here we can put detail message, right? Invalid mobile. So it is +91 and 10 digits, 10 digits required. So 10 digits required. This is the message we are giving. Now, for example, now for this also same, what we have to do. So hash mobile, if it is valid, then div beside it display as none, and hash mobile, if it is invalid, then div beside it display as at block, display as block. That is what we have to define. Now you can see here name required. This is not required na. This is currently using only validation. Now we can add multiple, but that is through JavaScript. Here we can add only one combinations here. Suppose I am writing like, so option like name, username, okay. Then mobile, see I am typing, it shows invalid. So 978654321 0. Still invalid because it should start with +91. Now it is okay. If anything different, it's not valid. It should exactly match. You can add multiple also. Multiple means, for example, if I write here required, that means now two validations are. But message is only one you can show, because multiple validations, different messages means you have to go with CSS. We have to go with CSS. So here, JavaScript. So here you can give only through CSS, you can give only this. Multiple means you have to do. That means what we do, mobile required. So that means mobile, I will message, I will give mobile required uh, or invalid, right? Like this I am giving. I am writing two options. I am saying mobile required or invalid. You see now, that means mobile is required or invalid. So name I entered, that is fine. Mobile I am starting, it is showing that here. And a 10-digit number I entered. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it should start with plus 91. But actually, it should not be like that. If required not satisfied, it will show only mobile required. If number wrong, it should say number is wrong. But such things we can't do with CSS. For that, we have to use JavaScript, right? Here, this is good for this kind of validations. This is the combination of how you can define this required, optional, valid, and invalid. In range, out of range, it is used for numbers, right? For example, I am giving another data term, age, and the data definition. Here I am using input type is equal to text, or we will give input type is equal to number. Generally, number have min is equal to 15, max is equal to some 30. Then I will give here, so ID as age, and we will keep a div below it. That means here I will write age 15 to 30 only. So that means now here I will just give style what color, red. And now you can see, now here I am not writing validation yet. We will write validation for that. So hash age, if it is out of range, in range, right? If it is in range, then the div beside it, display is what? None. Display is none. So if it is here age, so out of range, then we have to display as a block. Which one? Div should display as block. Not only that, you can give even colors for that control. That means, for example, here we are affecting div. Instead of that, you can write like this also. Let me write. I will remove this div. If it is in range, then I will put border pixel solid green. Okay, if it is in range. If it is out of range, then border 1 pixel solid red. And this is for not for div. Then for which one it will apply? If it is not for div, it will apply for the text box. So this is, you are applying effect for text box and this. Now I am entering name. Okay, I am entering mobile. So plus 91 and 10-digit. Age, giving here, suppose 10, it says 15 to 30 only. And I entered 22, it will display. Actually, if I entered 12, you see red color will come. We are applying border red color. At the same time, we are giving message also. If it is correctly entered, some 22, then it is fine. So we can write such validations. So CSS will provide validation state classes. The validation state classes, we have required, we have optional, we have valid, we have invalid, we have in range and out of range. These are the validation state related classes. I will give another example, right? This is for valid, invalid, so and others, etc. Right? For all other things, this is example. Designed just now, that is the example for that. These are all element state pseudo classes. So selectors are so many types now, right? Another important is we have attribute selectors. We have attribute selectors. Attribute selectors. What is the purpose of attribute selectors and how do we define attribute selectors? So very important. Why attribute selectors are very important? Because sometimes in HTML we have problem. The problem in HTML is some elements, for example, so suppose I defined input type is equal to text. Now input type is equal to button. It can have button. Now input type is equal to email. Like this we have options. Input type is equal to checkbox. Now which tag is used here for text box? For every element tag is input only. For every element tag is input only. Then how to apply for text box? If I say input, then it will work for all of them. Depend on ID or we have to depend on class. But ID class problem is everywhere we have to call ID. Na? Everywhere we have to call ID. Everywhere we have to call class. But how to apply to everyone without calling them? Suppose 10 times text box will come. Everywhere it should have that effect. Then you don't need to write 10 IDs and 10 times you have to refer the ID. ID is only one, but 10 times you have to refer everywhere. So that is why it is not possible, because here, suppose if I write type, type is a tag, type is not a tag. Type is not a tag. What is type? Type is not a tag. Type is an attribute. Na? Tag is what? Input is tag, type is what? Attribute. We have to apply effects based on attribute to some elements. For some elements, we cannot apply to tag because same tag is used for all elements. If same tag is used for all elements, you cannot write effects for tag. You have to write effects for attribute in the tag. That means now you have to write like this. What you have to do is, so you need to write like this. The attribute you have to write like this. That means you need to define like this. We have to use input. In the square brace, we have to write type is equal to text. Like this we have to write. This is called attribute selector. Why we need attribute selector? Because some elements are attribute. Some elements are presented with attribute, not by using tags. Means some elements presentation depends on attribute. It is presented with tag only, but presentation depends on attribute. Then based on attribute, we have to apply effects. Apply effects. For example, see now, suppose I will take another here. I will take another file, some styles.html. And here I'm doc type HTML head title. So selectors, okay. And in the body section, I'm using data list, data term, so name and the data definition input type is equal to text, okay. And another data term, some mobile, and here data definition input type is equal to text. Now I have to create buttons. I'm giving input type is equal to button, input type is equal to button, and value as some submit register something. And here again, input type is equal to button. This is also button, but value is equal to cancel. We have HTML 4 buttons, 5 buttons, anything we can use. Now see here, I want to apply some effects. I want to apply some effects. If I want to apply some effects, what we have to do is we need to define style. We need to define style. Here we are writing input background color as yellow. Then you can see it will apply to all of them. But because everyone is coming from input only, but we want to apply based on type. For only buttons we want, then what you can do is we can use square brace. Here attribute is type is equal to value. Attribute value is button. If it is button, then apply. Then only for buttons it will apply. What is advantage of this is you don't need to write classes and IDs. Wherever text box come, you can apply. Wherever email comes, you can have an effect. For that, you have to just use input type as text. That means wherever text comes, it will apply. Wherever email comes, you can apply. But for that, you need email. We don't have email. Suppose any type is set to email, then it will apply there. Right? That depends on how you want to configure. So here I want for button, then I can apply for button. This is called attribute selector. But here so many points are there. Again, attribute selector, so many options are there. First, I will give you what is an attribute selector. Attribute selector, it allows to apply effects based on the element attribute instead of tag directly. That means, so actually syntax you have to write like this. We have element and in the square brace attribute equal to value. Then what effects you want, you have to write like this. This is how we need to define. We have to write element and we have to define element attribute and its value. Actually, there is another technique here. Another technique means we can write like element just attribute and effects. If you don't use value, why we should not use value sometimes? Because see, I will first copy this example. This is one example. I will copy. I will show you why we cannot use value every time. For example, see, we will do one thing. It is not only input, it is for anything. Just like you see, we have P, this is para 1. And like this, we have some paragraphs. So para 2, para 3, para 4, para 5. We have some paragraphs. Para 3, 4, 5, some paragraphs are there. Some paragraphs are defined. Now important, when you have these paragraphs, then what is the approach? Have these paragraphs, what is the approach? See, in these paragraphs, suppose second paragraph have an ID called P2. Fourth paragraph is having an ID called P4. That means every paragraph have different ID. Now I want to apply effects to the paragraphs that have ID. Apply effects to paragraph that have ID. ID value may be anything. Suppose if I write like this now, P square brace, what is it? ID is equal to P2. Then it will apply only to P2, color red. That means it will apply only for second paragraph. But I want to apply to every paragraph that have ID. ID value may be anything, but it should have ID. Then in that case, you can just use only attribute, no need of value. Then value may be anything, but ID is there, it will work. Then you see it will apply to second and fourth. That means you can define attribute, you can define attribute and values. It is not necessary to be having a value every time. You can define attribute also directly. We can configure attribute also directly. Example is this. Only for attribute you can define like this. This is attribute. Now very important is attribute selectors. Attribute selectors have conditions. Attribute selectors will have condition. Actually, you see attribute is equal to value. I'm giving attribute is equal to value. This is equal to, that means it should exactly match. It should be equal to, that is exactly match. That means the attribute should exactly match with it. That is equal to. Here we have like this. Attribute is equal to attribute exponent equal to value. We have attribute dollar equal to value. We have attribute tilde equal to value. Like this we have. Now the point is, what is this here? That means what is this? Dollar equal, and we have attribute like attribute exclamation equal. Actually it is pipe equal to value. You have like this. So equal to value. These are the options. Now these are all conditions actually. These are all conditions. Let's see the conditions here. What are these conditions? To understand conditions, you use so many things here. Let's see. Here we have paragraphs. Okay. Paragraph 5. Okay. Paragraph 6. 6 paragraphs I am having. See here, I am giving class called effects for first paragraph. So class as effects text. Another text effects. Another class called so animate effects text like this. Animate effects text like this. Now here I have another class called so effects hyphen text. So we have another option class called effects and space text. That is, this is one class, this is another class. So many options are there. Now you see here, what I am doing is I am writing here for paragraph. So what is it? Class is equal to, what is it? Effects. This indicates equal. This indicates equal to effects. Now tell me for which paragraph it will apply. Equal means exact match. For which paragraph will it apply? First one. For which paragraph it will apply? Tell me. For which paragraph it will apply? First paragraph. What about last? Why it will apply to last? Last is exact match. Last is not exact match. Na? It is having space, right? That means now you see it will work for only first. Equal means exact match. It should have only effects. Understood? Equal means exact match. Because remember, this is entire string only, but separated with space. It is not exact match. Exact match is this one. So that is important. Another important, so here we have, yeah, another important here we have, here I can put here exponent equal. This exponent equal indicates starts with, exponent equal indicates starts with. You remembered regular expression I told you. In regular expression I told you this is used for starts with, ends with, starts with. Second one is ends with. Starts, dollar is used for ending with. Exponent is used for starting with. Starting with. In regular expression, I explained that already. Now the point here is starts with. Now tell me to which paragraph it will apply. That means the value should start with effects. Now for which paragraph it will apply? First, second, third, fifth, sixth. Those are the paragraphs now. Actually, it is applying for that. First, second, fifth, sixth. First, second, and fifth and sixth, they are starting with. They are starting with. This indicates starts with. Starts with, right? We need to define starts with, right? Now, this indicates ends with. This indicates ends with. Tell me which paragraph. For which paragraph it will work? First one also will work, na? Because first one is starting and ending now, right? First one I work, another one, first one it will work, third one is also ending na, third one is also ending, ends with first one and third one, right? You see first and third, that is starts with and ends with. That's the combination actually, how it is going to work, first and third, because first one is both matching for starting, ending also. Now you have options like you have tilde. Here little important is there. If I means actually you see it is going to apply first and sixth. What is the condition is tilde means it should start with, it should start with, it should start with and should contain effects. Even with space also it will be okay. That means what is the meaning of equal? Exact match. After that space is there, it will not allow. So tilde means ignore space. Ignore space. Match exactly by ignoring space. But observe carefully. Suppose there is another option. This is text effects. Text space effects. Is it starting with a? It is not starting with. It is not starting with. You see, it will apply here also. That means it is 7. That means what is meant by tilde? Tilde means whether it starts with or it ends with, but it should be having a space, right? That means with the space anywhere, if it comes individually, it will work. That means anywhere with space. That means any location. For example, animate space effect space text. If I write like this, now you can see para 4 also working. Para 4 also working. Any location with space. Any location with space. Without space, it will not work. Any location with space, you have to define. That means what does this means? Tilde means any location with space. Any location with space, starting with, ending with, before, after, in between, anywhere. It should be individual. It should be individual. Any location with the space. Without space, it will not come. With the space, mandatory. With space is mandatory. That is the condition. One more important is there. Here, you see, if I use pipe symbol, that means this is actually to indicate not. Actually, it is indicating not equal. We usually call as not equal. But observe here, it is going to about first and fifth. First and fifth is nothing but, why fifth here is, what does this indicates? Suppose here, remember, this is with the space na. Any location with space. This is any location with hyphen actually, but not any location actually with hyphen separator. Understood? With hyphen separator. But observe carefully. I am writing like this: text hyphen effects. Text hyphen effects. Now you can see here, it is not working for that. It is not working for that. That means, what does this means now? Separator with hyphen separator, and very important is it should start with. It should start with and should have hyphen. Any location means you can go with tilde symbol. Only start with and hyphens. Why they have given specially spaces and hyphens option? Because when we write CSS, already we learned classes can be defined multiple. Multiple classes are separated with space. And traditionally, sometimes when you give lengthy names, we cannot use spaces. That is the reason we use hyphens. Sometimes when you give lengthy names for classes, we use hyphens. Majority of CSS classes, if you want to give lengthy names, better use hyphens for separating. If you use space for separating, what will happen? It will think that it is a separate file. It will think that it is a separate syntax actually, if you give separately. That is the reason you have to understand these scenarios. So conditions will be there. Conditions will be there. Equal to, starts with, ends with, any location with space. Any location with space. This is starts with and have an hyphen. Starts with and have an hyphen. Not any location. It is only starting with and having an hyphen. So these are attribute conditions. Attribute conditions. Example, I will post this. This is attribute condition. How you define the attribute conditions. So these are all called attribute selectors. In attribute selectors, there are so many things. We have direct attribute, we have attribute with value, and we have attribute with the conditions. This is attribute selectors. Next important is we have structural selectors. We have structural selectors. Structural selectors based on the structure location. Structural selectors means based on the structure location. Structure location means what? Actually, structure location means structural means hierarchy. We call it as. That means it depends on hierarchy. Hierarchy means parent child hierarchy. But for parent child hierarchy already we learned. But this is to handle various occurrences in hierarchy. Occurrences in hierarchy. That means parent child only. In that, is it first? Is it last? Is it even? Is it odd? Is it at fourth place? Is it at fifth place? Like that we need to define. For that, what we have to do is we have to use structural selectors. For structural selectors, we have so many options. We have like first child, structural classes. So structural selectors, we call it as pseudo classes only. These also pseudo classes. Structural selector pseudo classes. These are Structural selector pseudo classes, we have like first child, we have like last child, first child, last child. So we have like nth child, nth child, first child, last child, nth child. We have so options like nth of type, nth of type. So we have nth last of type, last of type, like this. Nth of type, nth last of type, these are options. Actually so many others were there, but now in the latest versions some shortcuts introduced. Due to that shortcuts, we don't need to use many selectors, we can just use these and manage. So actually, for example, I will show you here. See, for example, here I am defining first child. See, for that you need parent child, so I will give OL. So list item, suppose item 1, okay, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like this. Ordered list or table, anything you can give. Ordered list or table, anything you can define, right? Anything you can configure, right? Now see, now I am giving for list item. For list item, if I put color as red, that means every list item it will apply red. I want only for first, only for first. Then I can see here first child, first child. We can use first child. That means it will apply only for first. Suppose I am giving like li like last child, last child, last child. I just given as color green. So that means first child is red, last child is green. So first is red, last is green. We can apply to any location. That means this is first and last, right? So we can apply to first, we can apply to last. Suppose I am defining like nth child, nth child, which number? You have to write the number 2. We have to write 2. That means if I write 2, then it will apply to second, right? Then I apply to 3, then it will apply to third. You can apply to any level. Any level you can define. Nth child, you can define any level. Actually, for example, so here nth child we are defining. Actually, there is an option, we can just write the word even. That means for all even occurrences it will be like this: 2, 4, 6, 8. Suppose I written, that means even one color, then nth child odd. You can use these words, color as blue. That means even is red, odd is blue. So you can even, I'm just applying color. We can apply background color, foreground color, anything. Any effect we can apply. It depends how you want to display. Attributes we will learn next level. We will discuss. This is just to understand how we configure. Because when you are designing tables and all, for every row different, even rows one color, odd rows another color. Like that we can configure by using even and odd. So here that is first child, last child, nth child. What is nth of type, nth last of type? Actually, we don't need that now. These days in the latest version of CSS, without that we can apply. Without that we can manage. How? I will show you. Suppose I am writing here, I am writing here nth of type. If I say nth of type 2, then see what happens. Nth of type 2 means it applies for 2. After that, that means it looks same. But additionally here, nth of type 2n, 2n indicates for every second occurrence. For every second occurrence. That means First starts with 2. Every 2 occurrences it will apply this. It will be like 2, 4, 6, 8. But starting with where? Starting with 2. I want to start with 1. And every 2 occurrences I want to apply. That means here we use +1. This indicates starting with 2, starting with 1 for every 2 occurrence. Starting with 1 every 2 occurrence. Starting with 1 every 3 occurrence. That means every 3 occurrence it will be there. That means first, fourth, seventh, every 3 occurrences. Starting with 2 every 3 occurrence, then it will be like this. Starting with 2 every 3, starting with 3 every 3 occurrence. Your wish, depends. Right? You can configure. So this is nth of type. But very important, if I say 2n plus 1, that means for every second occurrence, starting with 1 from top, we use nth last of type. It will be from bottom. Last of type means from bottom every second. Starting with bottom first. Starting with bottom first. That means starting with bottom first. Starting with bottom first every 2 occurrences. Nth of type starting from top. Nth last of type starting from bottom. Nth at any location. At any location we can define. This is technically how you define structure. I uploaded one document. You see now? Then styles document. In that all these examples are there. In that all these examples are there. Classroom notes I will upload, but every point example I given. Right? Example program I given for everything. So this is example for that. Just rough example I am writing. So that is how you define the point. Syntactically, first let me give the syntax. So syntax, we can write nth child, we can just give number, or nth child, you can give even, or nth child, you can give odd, like words. And you can define nth of type, nth of type 2n. 2 means only second. Understood? If nth of type 2n, that means for every second occurrence. For every second occurrence. So nth of type 2n plus 1. Right? For every second, starting with first from top. Understood? From top. So nth last of type. This is 2n plus 1. This is starting from bottom. Right? Starting from bottom every nth occurrence. These are various ways of writing the effects. That means various ways of configuring and defining the effects. Various ways of configuring and defining it. This is basically how you need the options defining. Technically, that is the point how it works. Point how it works. That is the concept of working with structural pseudo classes. I will keep this example. This is an example to just understand structural pseudo classes. We have structural pseudo classes defined here. These are all structural pseudo classes. Right? Another important we have. So another important we have in the classes. We have element classes. Directly we call them as element classes. Element classes. And behavioral. Element classes and behavioral. Actually, element classes and behavioral, we have, this is little different actually. Here we have double colon. double colon, we have placeholder. We have like double colon before. So double colon after. We have double colon selection. So these are element classes and behavioral. So placeholder before, after selection, these are important. Actually, these are the options you can see. Suppose that means how to use them, how do we define them? Actually, suppose we are designing placeholder, we already know input type is equal to what? Text. For text, we have a placeholder called user name. That means now for this text, I want to for this placeholder, I want color, background color, anything you can apply. What is the meaning of double colon? Actually, so double colon indicates that, so one colon is for inheritance. It is for inheritance, right? Another colon is for implements. What is difference between inheritance and implements? Technically, lot of difference is there. So inheritance and implements is having lot of difference actually. For example, actually, we defined some rules. Okay, we defined some rules and we defined some logic. Okay, logic. That means now what we are doing all these days, that means remember, rules are implemented. Understood? And the logic is inherited. Logic is inherited. Understood? Logic is inherited and rules are implemented. Rules are implemented. Now what we are doing all these days, I am applying. So this is, I am applying for, suppose I said nth. For example, let's say, what is it? First child. Okay. Now what is first child can be? For which element first child? Is there any restriction? No, there is no restriction. It can work for list item. It can work for option. It can work for paragraph. Anything that comes as child. Is there any rule for that? There is no rule. Only occurrence first. But here there is a rule. Placeholder means. Do you have a placeholder? Do you have a placeholder? Span have a placeholder, order list have a placeholder. That means placeholder can be applied for everyone. No, it is only for text box. That means we have rules that it will not work for others. It will work for only text box. That means when you are implementing, you have to implement for only text box. For others, even you write, it will not work because they don't have it. That means here we have to have a rule and we have to use its functionality. For taking the rules, we call implements, and taking the functionality, we call inherits. That means now what we have to do, we have to create a text box. Understood? We have to create a text box. So that means we have input. So what is it? Type equal to text. And here we will write like this. We will write double colon. One colon is to inherit, another colon is to apply the rules. What is the rule? Placeholder. That means all classes don't have rules, but some classes have rules. If you are implementing the rules and also functionality, then that means you are using a class which is already having rules. It's mandatory to use double colon. That means a class with rules, without rules. Two options are there. All these days, whatever classes you learned without rules, but now these classes are with rules. That means you have to implement the rules also. Then we have to write like this. For example, it have an ID, username. Then what we do? Hash username double colon placeholder, and we will put some color as red. Then you can see it will apply for that. Now this cannot be used for other controls. It is only for placeholder, and that will work only for text box. We have certain rules. That is what actually placeholder. Before and after. Before and after also rules. Before and after means, for example, I will copy this one example. This is one example. Okay. Next one, another is here. Suppose I am writing some options like unordered list item, like I given as home, another list item. In this home, we have categories. In these categories, we have electronics. In this electronics, we have mobiles. In this mobiles, we have Samsung. Actually, this is not all same level. This is level by level actually. Means generally we call these as site maps. You remembered in links I told you, every website will have a site map. In when they design site map, they will design in which category that is present. That means for an option where it is present, we will show as a category. You see now, what I am doing is for unordered list, display as flex. I'm using display flex. Display flex means it will be like this. It is flex. Okay. Next, what we are doing is list style. List style. List style we will put as none. That means list will not be there. Now, what we will do is for every list item, after we give after. After every list item, we put content. I am using content. What content after every list item? Content can be like this. Any symbol you want. Any symbol you want. That means now you see that after every list item, like this arrow will come. After every list item, the arrow will come. You can put various special symbols which you will learn while learning attributes. We will discuss. Means how to put these contents, I will show you various. But very important, after last Samsung, I don't want this. Tell me how to remove. After the last one, I don't want that content anymore. Tell me how to get the last list item. Li colon last child. Am I right? Last child double colon after. Means after last child. What should happen? Content. Content should be empty. Understood? Empty string. That means after the last child list item, content is empty. That means now there will be no last one. It will stop here. After that, it will not be there. We can use before, we can use after. Suppose I can write this before. Before means it will be like this. After first child, you should not have. Na? That means instead of last child, what you have to do? First child. First child, it should not be there. That is first child before, right? First child before, it should not be there. We can remove. We can use the combinations like that. You can put any symbol. Suppose I am keeping, sometimes we keep like this slash symbol. Like this, it will be separated. Before, after it. You can put anything, not only content. You can keep margin. Suppose margin left, okay? Margin left 5 pixels before, right? That means margin left will be some space. You can add anything. We can configure anything. We can add symbols and options. Now, for example, the last child, that means I'm giving li last child. So color is gray. like this, that means it indicates this is active, right? We can define in this way. We can define in this way. Various options we can configure and use. This is all generally the example of these element classes and behavioral means before it is coming, after it is coming. Not only that, you have another option. For example, see here, suppose I have some paragraph. So I have some paragraph here. Okay, you see here, when I'm selecting paragraph, you see some color is coming, right? Actually, that is also through CSS we can do. That is, suppose some paragraph is there, some paragraph is there, you can see some paragraph is here. And what I am doing here, simply I am writing an option here. I am giving an option paragraph. So we have to use selection. So background color yellow. That means you can see the selection background color will be yellow. That means it indicates that you are selecting it. It indicates that you selected it. That is selection background color yellow. Like that you can define, right? This is basically done by using selection. By using selection we can handle it. That is another select. Another important, you have a root selector. We have a universal selector, but actually these are no longer much used. Root selector is used. Root indicates body. That means sometimes what happens is we design a document with multiple body sections. How you design multiple body? You remembered iframes and all. We can put some other page and bring it and display. That means it contains multiple body. Then I have to apply for all of them. Then in that case, in such situations, we have an habit of writing directly :root. This indicates the root of all body sections. There can be multiple bodies in your page. For all of them, root. This is good if you are using iframes and all. For root, what you want, your wish. That means you can put font family, some Arial. That means for the root, it will apply that font family. Actually, it is equal to body. But body is only one document body, but this is for all. If there are multiple documents, it is very useful. For that, we have to use root. Root selector is defined just by using root. No element name, nothing, just :root. That's it. We have to use. Actually, earlier we used to do it with asterisk also. Asterisk is equivalent to root, but now it is not good, recommended. Better always use root. People usually call it as universal selector, right? But actually not required. Suppose I am not using this root, that means that font is not working. I can use asterisk. It is similar. It is similar, right? But now these days we don't use this asterisk, only asterisk anymore. We always better define root. So what? Root. That's how we have to configure, how you need to define, right? So another important selector is there, language selector, but that is not now. Why? Because for that first you need to know language. Those languages I will tell you in attribute. Language selector is defined with lang. But language we haven't learned, we will learn later. To learn language, you need to learn attributes now. Those we are going to start. We are going to start learning attributes. Language means generally, suppose we have two paragraphs. Two paragraphs are there. Usually what happens is, suppose one paragraph is using a language, so English. Another paragraph actually is using, another paragraph is using some another language called France or German or English, like that. Actually, what you can do is you can apply a paragraph with a language selector, So here we can define language is what? English. So if language is English, then color as red, something like this I define. That means it will apply where English is there, right? Actually, various languages we need to put later. But for that, we can present the content in that language also. For that, we need some more attributes to understand, right? Then we can use this language selector. Just syntax. So just syntax I will give here. So just syntax I will give here, right? Syntax only just we will put here. But this is all how you define the selector, right? So these are all CSS selectors. I hope you understood all of them. So this is not learning about CSS styles. You have learned only selectors. That means you haven't learned CSS. You learned just only selectors. Selectors means how CSS chooses elements. Now to those elements we need to apply effects. To apply effects we have to learn now CSS attributes. Understood? By using CSS attributes you can apply effects. We will see that. How to use these attributes and work with them. Tomorrow we will see. Right? Tomorrow we will continue with these attributes. Right? Right. Tomorrow we will discuss. One more point is there for online people. From tomorrow onwards, link will change. For online people, we will post a link. You have to register in that link with your registered mobile and email, correct mobile and email, because our admin will verify and our admin will add you to a classroom app. Separate app is there. You have to attend classes on that app from tomorrow. Not from tomorrow. Tomorrow I will show you how to attend. After that you can attend. Okay, right? We have a separate app for that. We will use that app. So I will post a form today. You have to fill up the form and then you will get a password. Through that you have to log in, right? So from tomorrow I will give you that. Okay,